Hands behind your back now.
Clear. Moving to the vehicle.
4 ICE agents thought they were walking into a routine immigration enforcement stop. New sirens. No backup call. No hesitation. Just an address. An anonymous tip. And the quiet confidence that comes from years of acting without consequences. At exactly 1100 a.m. on a calm Thursday morning, a black government SUV rolled into a quiet suburban driveway in Northern Virginia. Birds chirped. Lawns were freshly cut. Nothing about the scene suggested that a federal crime was about to unfold in broad daylight. What those agents didn't know was that this driveway belonged to Congresswoman Ela Harris. And what they definitely didn't know was that every second of what they were about to do was already being recorded in 4K video with clear audio. Backed up to the cloud completely outside their control. For years, these agents had operated in the gray zones of the law. Anonymous tips. Administrative authority. Stops that were never questioned. People who didn't fight back. People who didn't have cameras. But this time was different, because the woman inside that house wasn't powerless. She wasn't uninformed, and she wasn't afraid. By the time the SUV came to a stop and the doors opened, the outcome was already sealed. 4 careers were about to end. Federal charges were about to be written. And a legal precedent was about to be set that would echo far beyond one driveway. Before we continue, where are you watching from? And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. Because stories like this don't just expose abuse of power. They show what happens when the law finally meets the camera. Ela Harris was not just another name on a clipboard. At 51 years old, she had served Virginia's 8th congressional district for nearly a decade. A sitting member of the United States House of Representatives, she was known in Washington for 2 things: a sharp legal mind and a refusal to back down when federal agencies crossed the line. Ela sat on the Judiciary Committee. She helped draft legislation governing immigration enforcement. She had subpoenaed internal ICE records, demanded answers about detention abuses, and publicly criticized the agency's expanding use of administrative authority to bypass constitutional safeguards. Inside ICE, her name was familiar, and not in a good way. To some agents, she wasn't a lawmaker. She was a problem. That Thursday morning, however, she wasn't thinking about ICE or politics. She had been up since dawn. A short run, a quick shower, coffee cooling on the kitchen counter as she reviewed notes for committee meetings on Capitol Hill. Her husband had already left for work. Her children were away at college. She was alone. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of security cameras mounted along the exterior. Cameras she'd installed after receiving threats for her public stance on civil rights. 4 covering the yard. 2 watching the driveway. 1 aimed directly at the front porch. All recording. All uploading automatically. All waiting. At 6:15 she oped a.m. The cameras picked up a black SUV turning into the driveway. 2 minutes later, Ela opened her front door briefcase in hand, completely unaware that the moment she stepped outside, her life and 4 federal careers were about to collide. Ela stepped onto the front porch and paused. 4 people were getting out of the SUV dark jackets. Clipped movements. The unmistakable posture of federal agents. They didn't knock. They didn't announce themselves politely. They spread out across the driveway in a way that felt rehearsed. Controlled. Tactical. The driveway camera captured everything. The lead agent, Christopher Nash, moved first. 16 years with ICE. A thick disciplinary file buried under internal reviews that never went anywhere. He stopped at the base of the porch steps and raised his voice. "Ma'am, stop right there." Don't move. Hila tightened her grip on her briefcase. Her instincts told her immediately this wasn't right. "Excuse me," she said evenly. "This is my home. Who are you?" Nash flashed his badge quick. Distant. Just long enough to assert authority without offering accountability. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He said, "You need to come with us for questioning." Hila took one step down from the porch. "About what?" she asked. "And do you have a warrant?" The question hung in the air. Nash didn't hesitate. "We don't need one." Those 4 words, spoken casually, confidently, would later become the centerpiece of a federal criminal case. Hila's expression shifted from confusion to controlled anger. "I'm Congresswoman Hila Harris," she said. "You're standing on my property. If you don't have a warrant, you need to leave." Instead of backing off, Nash stepped closer. That was the moment the encounter stopped being a misunderstanding and became an illegal detention unfolding in real time. Nash didn't respond to her title. He responded with movement. Agent Tyler Bennett shifted to Hila's left, subtly cutting off her path back toward the front door. Another agent lingered to the right. It wasn't aggressive yet, but it was deliberate. Hila noticed immediately. "I asked you a question," she said. "What is the basis for this stop?" Bennett's voice was low, edged with threat. "Ma'am, you can cooperate and come with us for questioning, or we can detain you for obstruction." Hila's eyes narrowed. "Detain me for what?" she asked. Standing in my own driveway, she reached into her jacket and pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my attorney." Before she could finish the sentence, Agent Nicole Pritchard stepped forward sharply. "Put the phone down," she said. "You're not calling anyone until we finish our investigation." That was the line they crossed. Hila's voice rose not in panic, but in authority. "You don't get to tell me I can't call my lawyer. You don't get to show up at a congresswoman's home without a warrant and start issuing commands." Nash's face hardened. "We have credible information," he said, "that you've been harboring undocumented individuals at this residence." The accusation landed heavy and absurd. Hila stared at him. "Then show me the warrant," she said slowly. "Show me the probable cause affidavit. Show me any legal document that gives you the right to accuse me of a felony on my own property." Behind Nash, Agent James Wu shifted uncomfortably. He knew this was wrong. Everyone there knew it, but no one spoke up. The cameras kept rolling, and the agents kept going. For a brief moment, the driveway was silent. Then Nash straightened his shoulders, adopting the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "We have administrative authority," he said, "that supersedes standard warrant requirements in immigration cases." It sounded official. It sounded rehearsed. And it was completely false. Hila didn't hesitate. "That's not true," she said, "and you know it." She took another step down, now level with the agents. "I sit on the Judiciary Committee. I help write the laws you're pretending to enforce. You need a warrant to search my home. You need probable cause to detain me. You have neither." Nash's jaw tightened. The camera caught it clearly, the flash of anger. The loss of control. Behind him, Wu looked away. He knew the line Nash had just crossed wasn't gray. It was bright red. But years inside, the system had taught him a lesson early. You don't contradict the senior agent. Nash stepped closer to the porch. "Turn around," he said. "Hands behind your back." Hila stood perfectly still. "I'm not doing that," she replied. "You have no legal authority to arrest me. I am ordering you to leave my property immediately." For a split second, Nash hesitated. That was the last chance for this to end legally. Instead, he made a choice. A choice that would turn a bad stop into a federal felony. Nash moved first. He reached out and grabbed Hila's arm. Not violently at first, just hard enough to assert control. But Hila reacted on instinct, pulling her arm back. Not to attack, but to protect herself. "Don't touch me," she said sharply. "You have no." She didn't finish the sentence. Agent Bennett rushed in from the side, seizing her other arm. The sudden force knocked her balance off. Her briefcase slipped from her hand and hit the porch with a dull thud. Papers scattered across the steps, sliding toward the driveway. "This is assault," Ella shouted. "Get your hands off me. I'm a member of Congress." The cameras captured everything. Nash twisted her arm behind her back too high, too fast, at an angle that sent a jolt of pain through her shoulder. Hila cried out. The sound echoed down the quiet street. Agent Pritchard stepped in to help restrain her. Agent Wu stood back, frozen, his face tight with realization. The metallic click of handcuffs cut through the air. Across the street, a front door opened. A neighbor, an older woman, stepped onto her lawn, phone already raised. "What are you doing?" she yelled. "That's Congresswoman Harris." Another door opened, then another. Phones came out. Voices rose. Recording began from every angle. Hila, now handcuffed, forced herself to stand upright despite the pain. "You are making the biggest mistake of your careers," she said, her voice steady, deliberate. "This is all being recorded." Nash didn't respond. He tightened his grip and began marching her toward the SUV. And at that moment, the arrest stopped being questionable. It became undeniable. They reached the SUV as more neighbors stepped outside, drawn by the shouting and the sight of handcuffs in a quiet suburban street. Agent Bennett pulled open the rear door. As they pushed Hila forward, her head nearly struck the doorframe. She ducked at the last second, the movement awkward and painful with her arms pinned behind her back. The roughness of it was unmistakable, captured clearly by 2 driveway cameras and at least 3 phones across the street. "Careful," a voice yelled from the sidewalk. "You're hurting her." Before the door could close, Hila straightened and lifted her chin. She knew this moment mattered. She turned her face slightly toward the nearest camera and spoke slowly, clearly, making sure every word would be impossible to misinterpret later. "My name is Congresswoman Hila Harris," she said. "United States House of Representatives, Virginia's 8th District." She paused, breathing through the pain. "I am being detained without a warrant, without probable cause, and without legal authority." Her eyes moved from camera to camera. "The date is Thursday. The time is approximately 11:15 a.m. I am being taken from my home against my will. I have committed no crime." The agent stood frozen for half a second, long enough for the words to land, long enough for the cameras to capture their faces. Then Nash slammed the door shut. The SUV pulled away from the curb at 1117 a.m. Behind it, neighbors were already dialing 911. Others were uploading video. Text messages were being sent to staffers, reporters, anyone who would answer. Within minutes, the footage left the driveway. And once it did, there was no stopping what came next. By the time the SUV reached the ice field office in Arlington, the story was already escaping their control. Inside the vehicle, Hila sat upright despite the pain in her shoulder. Her phone, still in her jacket pocket, had quietly activated its emergency recording feature the moment the cuffs went on. Every word inside the SUV was being captured. Every threat. Every assumption. At the same time, back on the street she'd just been taken from, neighbors were still filming, One woman was on the phone with 911, her voice shaking with anger. "They just arrested our congresswoman. No warrant. You need to send someone now." Another neighbor sent the video directly to Ella's chief of staff, Marcus Johnson, whose number he had saved from a town hall meeting months earlier. Marcus saw the clip while sitting in his Capitol Hill office. Within seconds, he was on the phone with the Speaker of the House, then the House Majority Leader, then Ela's attorney, a veteran civil rights litigator named Catherine Reed. Reed didn't hesitate. She walked out of federal court mid-hearing and headed straight for ICE headquarters. Back at the field office, Agent Nash still believed he was in control. He sat across from Ela in an interrogation room, leaning back in his chair. Badge visible. Tone smug. "Congresswoman," he said, almost mocking the word. "We have information you've been harboring undocumented workers. You're going to answer some questions." Ela met his eyes calmly. "I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent," she said, "and my Sixth Amendment right to an attorney. I will not answer anything without counsel present." Nash leaned forward. "That's going to make things harder for you." Ela didn't raise her voice. "No," she said evenly. "What you've already done has made things impossible for you. At unsprezeche, chinzechi, shidoi a, m." The interrogation room door suddenly flew open. A senior ICE supervisor stepped inside, her face pale, her voice sharp. "Nash, Bennett, get out. Now." Behind her stood two federal agents from another agency. In that moment, the power in the room shifted completely. Ad dois prezeche tre pay. M. Just over an hour after she'd been taken from her driveway, Ela Harris walked out free. The agents who brought her in did not. The fallout was immediate and unstoppable. That afternoon, the Department of Justice opened a criminal civil rights investigation. The FBI seized the agents' badges, service weapons, and credentials. By nightfall, all four were placed on administrative leave. 6 weeks later, the case moved into a federal courtroom. The prosecution didn't rely on speculation or politics. They pressed play. The jury watched the driveway footage in silence. Multiple angles. Clear audio. The moment Nash said, "We don't need a warrant." The arm twist. The handcuffs. Ella calmly invoking her rights. Then came testimony. Agent Christopher Nash took the stand first, under oath. He insisted he had acted in good faith based on an anonymous tip. The prosecutor let him speak. Then asked one question. "When Congresswoman Harris told you who she was, what did you think?" Nash hesitated. "I thought she was trying to use her position to avoid questioning." "Did you verify her identity?" "No." "Why not?" Nash swallowed. "I didn't think it mattered." The courtroom went silent. The prosecutor leaned in. "You didn't think it mattered that you might be arresting a sitting member of the United States Congress." Nash shifted in his seat. "She looked like the other people we typically deal with." The words hung in the air heavy. Undeniable. The jury didn't need commentary. They understood exactly what had just been admitted. After Nash's testimony, everything unraveled. The prosecution didn't raise their voice. They didn't dramatize. They simply laid the pattern on the screen. ICE arrest records. 47 prior cases involving harboring undocumented individuals. Every single suspect, a person of color. Not one white defendant. Agent Nash stared at the monitor as the data filled the courtroom. "Is that a coincidence?" the prosecutor asked. Nash had no answer. Agent Bennett's testimony was worse. Under oath. He admitted he knew the arrest felt wrong. He admitted he heard Congresswoman Harris invoke her rights. He admitted he ignored it anyway because Nash was the senior agent. "I followed his lead," Bennett said quietly. "And when he grabbed her," the prosecutor asked, "I grabbed her too." Agent Pritchard broke down on the stand. Tears. Shaking hands. She testified that she knew the arrest was illegal but feared retaliation if she spoke up. In exchange for cooperation, the court noted her reduced sentencing recommendation. Then came Agent Wu. His testimony cut deepest. He described a unit culture where aggressive tactics were rewarded, complaints were buried, and targeting people of color was normalized. "I should have stopped it," Wu said. "I didn't because I thought it would end my career." The defense tried one last argument. They were just following orders. The judge interrupted. Following illegal orders has never been a defense. The jury didn't deliberate long. They had already seen enough. After 9 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Deprivation of rights under color of law. False imprisonment. Conspiracy. Assault. The courtroom was silent as the judge, Vanessa Richardson, took a breath and looked directly at the defendants. "What happened here," she said, "was not a mistake. It was a choice." She spoke slowly, deliberately, every word carrying weight. "You arrested a sitting member of Congress without a warrant, without probable cause, and without regard for the Constitution you swore to uphold. But this case is not just about Congresswoman Harris." She gestured toward the gallery. "It is about every person who has been unlawfully detained by agents who believe their badge places them above the law." The sentences followed. Christopher Nash, 5 years in federal prison. Tyler Bennett, 4 years. Nicole Pritchard, who cooperated, 2 years. James Wu, 3 years of probation and a lifetime ban from federal law enforcement. A quiet sob came from the back of the courtroom. Ayla Harris sat in the front row, her husband beside her, her children home from college. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply nodded. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Ayla stepped forward. "Today wasn't about revenge," she said. "It was about accountability." Her voice was steady, and accountability should never be optional. The shockwaves were just beginning. In the weeks that followed, the consequences rippled far beyond that one driveway. The 4 agents began serving their sentences in separate federal facilities. Their careers were over. Their pensions were gone. Their names would forever be tied to one of the clearest cases of civil rights violations ever captured on camera. The civil lawsuit came later. Congresswoman Ayla Harris sued both the agents individually and ICE as an agency. The settlement amount was never publicly disclosed, but sources confirmed it was substantial. Much of the money was directed toward legal defense funds for immigrants and families who had been unlawfully detained, people who never had cameras, never had witnesses, and never had a voice. ICE announced new reforms, new training, new oversight, new protocols. Whether the culture truly changed remained an open question. Ayla Harris returned to work. She continued introducing legislation to strengthen protections against unlawful detention, to impose harsher penalties on federal agents who violated civil rights, and to create independent oversight mechanisms with real enforcement power. The security cameras stayed, still mounted, still recording, still uploading to the cloud. The driveway became something more than a place to park a car. Ayla began inviting students, activists, and community groups to her home, walking them through the footage frame by frame, turning the place where her rights were violated into a classroom on the Fourth Amendment. When asked years later if she had forgiven the agents, her answer was measured. "Forgiveness is personal," she said. "Accountability is public." "What happened to me?" she added. happens every day to people without power. The only difference is that this time, the cameras were on. 4 cameras recorded 98 minutes that day. 98 minutes that proved something many had stopped believing, that when abuse of power is documented, witnessed, and confronted, the truth can win. Because in an age where everything can be recorded, authority no longer controls the story. The camera does. And sometimes, that makes all the difference.